The Temple Mount in Jerusalem has never been excavated, but an illegal construction project 20 years ago opened the door to some major discoveries.
We have a game-changing archaeological discovery to share with you right from the shadows of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem.
2,000 years. That's how long a hidden chamber beneath the Temple Mount is believed to have remained sealed before researchers finally broke through. What they discovered inside was astonishing. At the center of the chamber sat a stone basin layered with ash. Carved into its surface were words written in Paleo-Hebrew, an ancient script that closely matches biblical descriptions of one sacred place above all others, the Holy of Holies. One line stood out: "He who dwells here, his spirit never leaves." But here's what makes the discovery even more mysterious. The chamber hadn't simply been abandoned, it had been intentionally sealed. Every entrance was blocked. Stairways were filled with rubble. It was as if the people who closed it wanted to make absolutely certain that whatever lay inside would remain hidden forever. That raises the obvious question: why? What were they protecting? Or perhaps, what were they trying to preserve? And what else could still be buried beneath the most disputed and emotionally charged piece of land on Earth? Then came the catastrophe. In 1999, bulldozers began digging beneath the Temple Mount. The Islamic Waqf initiated construction of a new underground mosque in an area commonly known as Solomon's Stables. The project moved forward without authorization from Israeli authorities. More critically, it proceeded without archaeological supervision. Hundreds of truckloads of soil were removed from beneath one of the most historically significant religious sites in the world. This wasn't ordinary dirt. It was soil layered with nearly 3,000 years of history, fragments of civilizations, temples, kingdoms, conquests, and prayers. It contained pottery shards, coins, inscriptions, architectural pieces, silent witnesses to the past. Instead of being carefully examined, that soil was dumped into the Kidron Valley outside the old city walls. It was treated like construction waste, discarded, forgotten. When archaeologists realized what had happened, many were devastated. Some openly wept. To understand why this loss was so painful, you have to understand what the Temple Mount truly represents. It is not just a religious site. It is a crossroads of history, sacred to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It is a place layered with faith, conflict, memory, and identity. Every stone holds a story. Every layer of earth carries the imprint of those who came before. Beneath its surface lies a timeline of human civilization, and perhaps secrets that were never meant to be uncovered. So the real question remains: what has already been lost? And what still waits, buried in silence beneath the Temple Mount? This 35-acre limestone plateau is often described as the most sacred stretch of land on Earth. For Jews, it is the site where King Solomon built the first temple nearly 3,000 years ago. A temple that, according to tradition, housed the Ark of the Covenant inside the Holy of Holies, a chamber so sacred that only the high priest could enter, and only once a year. That temple was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BCE. A second temple later stood in its place, only to be destroyed again in 70 CE by the forces of the Roman Empire. For Muslims, this same hilltop is home to the noble sanctuary, the place from which the Prophet Muhammad is believed to have ascended to heaven during the night journey. For Christians, it is the setting where Jesus overturned the tables of the money changers, challenging corruption within the sacred courts. Three major faiths, one small hilltop. What makes this even more remarkable is that Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, despite long periods of isolation from one another and at times even violent hostility, developed strikingly similar ideas about God. Across centuries, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim thinkers wrestled with many of the same profound questions. Who is God? How does the divine interact with humanity? What does holiness truly mean? Yet, this shared spiritual heritage sits atop a political reality that is incredibly fragile. Any archaeological activity on the Temple Mount is charged with tension. A single excavation can trigger protests, diplomatic disputes, or even wider conflict. one misplaced shovel has the potential to ignite an international crisis. For more than a century, that delicate balance kept the deeper layers of the Temple Mount largely out of reach for archaeologists. Then everything changed. When the Islamic Waqf carried out large-scale construction work and bulldozers began removing earth from beneath the mount, Israeli archaeologists watched in disbelief. Truckload after truckload of soil saturated with thousands of years of history, was hauled away and dumped as if it were ordinary construction debris. To historians and archaeologists, this was not just dirt, it was a time capsule. Every layer held fragments of ancient lives, pottery, inscriptions, architectural remains, physical evidence of events that shaped civilizations. One archaeologist described the experience with emotion, saying it was deeply moving, not only because of the site's religious importance, but because the soil itself was like a snapshot of history, preserving moments from 2,600 years ago. To them, what was being discarded was not rubble, it was memory. These discoveries have helped illuminate ancient Jerusalem and fill in missing pieces of the story of King David's city. But they also revealed a painful truth. Millennia of potential discoveries had been ripped from their original context, scattered and discarded without any documentation at all. Yet where others saw only loss, two researchers saw something else: an opportunity. Gabriel Barkay had spent his entire career studying Jerusalem's ancient past. Decades earlier, he had already made one of the most important archaeological discoveries of the 20th century: tiny silver scrolls inscribed with the oldest known biblical texts ever found. Now in his 60s, as he watched truckloads of sacred soil being hauled off to a landfill, something inside him broke. He could not stand by and allow 3,000 years of human history to simply vanish. His colleague, Zachi Dvira, felt the same urgency, the same fire. Together, they launched what would become the Temple Mount Sifting Project. Working out of a public park in East Jerusalem, they began the slow, painstaking task of recovering what had been thrown away. There were no shortcuts, no heavy machinery, just human hands, patience, and determination. Volunteers soon arrived from all over the world, day after day, year after year. Bucket by bucket, they sifted through the discarded earth by hand. Fragment by fragment, the past began to reappear. And what emerged was nothing short of astonishing. More than 500,000 artifacts were recovered. Coins dating back to the time of Herod the Great, arrowheads from the Crusader era, jewelry from Islamic periods, pottery shards representing dozens of civilizations layered across centuries. Each piece told a story. Together, they told one undeniable truth: people have lived, worshipped, struggled, and dreamed on this land for thousands of years. As one of the archaeologists explained, when you lay out the pottery and artifacts side by side, the message becomes unmistakable. This project shows, in the simplest and most powerful way possible, an unbroken human presence spanning 3,000 years. There is no other project that demonstrates it more clearly. It confirms what people have spoken about, believed in, imagined, and prayed over for generations. The soil itself remembers, and through this effort, it finally has a voice again. Then came a discovery that made everyone stop and look twice. One of the volunteers noticed a small, hardened lump of clay. It was flattened, cracked with age, and easy to overlook. But when it was carefully examined under magnification, its true identity became clear. It was a bulla, an ancient clay seal used to secure official documents thousands of years ago. Stamped into its surface in Paleo-Hebrew were the words, "belonging to Gedaliahu, son of Imza." The name Imra appears in the book of Jeremiah as part of a priestly family active during the First Temple period. This tiny fragment of clay was more than just an artifact. It was evidence of a real individual, someone mentioned in scripture, who had lived and worked on this very site nearly 3,000 years ago. And it wasn't the only one. More bully followed, more names, more titles that aligned closely with biblical records. There were symbols too, images resembling menorahs, temple gates, and priestly garments. But here's what truly caught the researchers' attention. These first temple artifacts were not scattered randomly throughout the soil. They appeared in concentrated clusters gathered in specific areas. When mapped carefully, those clusters seemed to point toward particular sections of the Temple Mount, areas that corresponded closely with ancient descriptions of sacred zones. The Sifting Project had done more than recover lost history. It had revealed a pattern. It was as if the soil itself had left breadcrumbs, clues leading towards something specific. Now the question was obvious. Where did they lead? Researchers knew they had to follow the trail back to its source. Then a new chapter began. Between 2021 and 2024, a new generation of scholars stepped in. They combined cutting-edge technology with historical documents that had long been overlooked. Their attention turned to the southern edge of the Temple Mount, near the Western Wall tunnels. More than a century earlier, British surveyors working during the Ottoman and Mandate periods had mapped unusual underground voids in that very area, hidden chambers, staircases, hollow spaces that seemed difficult to explain. For decades, those reports sat quietly in archives. Many dismissed them as incomplete, speculative, or unreliable. But the new research team wasn't willing to ignore them. They decided to go back, re-examine the old maps, and test the claims using modern tools. If the earlier surveyors were even partially correct, there could be far more beneath the surface than anyone had realized. And this time, the researchers were determined to find out. Because physical excavation beneath the Temple Mount remains politically and religiously restricted, researchers had to find another way. Instead of digging, they turned to ground-penetrating radar, the same advanced technology that helped identify hidden voids inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. What the scans revealed was remarkable. Beneath the natural bedrock, the radar picked up straight lines and geometric shapes, patterns that don't normally occur in untouched geology. Instead of irregular stone formations, there were clean edges and structured outlines. The signatures strongly suggested man-made construction, sealed and hidden for centuries. Then came an even more intriguing step. Researchers overlaid the new radar data with hand-drawn British survey maps from the early 1900s, created during the Ottoman and Mandate periods. When the two were compared, the results were striking. The same corridors appeared, the same blocked staircases, the same unexplained voids. More than a century of technological progress had just confirmed what early explorers had suspected long ago. But that wasn't the end of it. While working inside the Western Wall tunnels, crews were carefully clearing debris from an ancient structure dating back to the time of Herod. During the process, they uncovered something unexpected, a partially buried limestone staircase. It descended downward into darkness. At the bottom, researchers stepped into a forgotten antechamber. The upper walls carried carvings from the Byzantine era, faded crosses and inscriptions dating to the 4th or 5th century. It was clear that, at some point, early Christians had used this space as a place of worship. But when archaeologists examined the floor more closely, they realized the story didn't end there. Beneath that Byzantine layer lay something far older, hidden under centuries of history, waiting to be understood. For thousands of years, the Jewish people have felt a deep connection to this place. Many believe that connection has been challenged, disputed, even deliberately obscured over time, an attempt in their view to separate them from a core part of their identity. But instead of arguing on the surface, researchers decided to do something different. They chose to go beneath it. Literally. As excavations continued in permitted areas around the Temple Mount, massive foundation stones began to emerge, finely cut ashlar blocks, precisely stacked in a style rarely seen after the First Temple period. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. Each stone fit tightly against the next, suggesting advanced skill and careful planning. Then came the discovery that sent a chill through the research team. A secondary staircase, half collapsed and packed with rubble, descended even deeper into the bedrock. But this was no ordinary collapse. The blockage was deliberate. The passage hadn't been sealed by time or by accident. It had been intentionally filled and closed off by human hands. Someone, long ago, had made a conscious decision to hide whatever lay beyond. As researchers expanded their mapping around these sealed chambers, they uncovered something even more surprising: an extensive underground network of cisterns, channels, and aqueducts carved directly into the bedrock itself. The system was vast, interconnected, and engineered with a level of sophistication that far exceeded expectations for its era. When mineral deposits from the plaster linings were carbon dated, the results stunned the team. These waterworks were not Roman. They were not Herodian. They dated back to the First Temple period, roughly the 8th to 9th century BCE. But it wasn't just the age that impressed experts. It was the design. Narrow feeder tunnels directed rainwater runoff into reservoirs in a way that prevented stagnation. Overflow ducts carried excess water into secondary chambers, protecting the system from flooding while ensuring a steady supply. The layout accounted for pressure, flow rate, and seasonal variation in a region known for long, dry summers. This wasn't crude or primitive infrastructure. It was highly intentional, purposeful. When researchers overlaid maps of the cistern network with descriptions found in the Book of Chronicles, new connections began to appear. Several cisterns aligned with locations mentioned in passages describing preparations made by Israelite kings to support temple rituals. One especially large basin sat directly beneath an area that Hebrew texts associate with the altar of sacrifice. Inside that basin, archaeologists found thick layers of ash and faint traces of organic residue, evidence of repeated use over many generations. The signs pointed toward ritual activity: ceremonial hand-washing, cleansing of sacred tools, libation offerings. What emerged was not the image of a simple or primitive religious practice. It was a carefully designed system, an integrated structure built to sustain ritual life. In many ways, it functioned like a machine devoted to holiness, where architecture, engineering, and worship were woven together into one purposeful design. The channels didn't end randomly. They led straight toward the sealed chambers, spaces no one had entered in more than 2,000 years. Carefully, the research team moved forward through the darkness. They passed ancient water channels carved into the bedrock. They stepped beyond what appeared to be old priestly rooms. They edged by the staircase that had been deliberately blocked long ago, sealed with a finality that felt intentional, almost protective. Dr. Yuval Baruch, the lead archaeologist, could feel his pulse pounding in his ears. Every step felt heavier than the last. The passageway grew narrower. The air felt dense, stale, ancient, as if it hadn't been disturbed by human breath for centuries. At the end of a corridor that had not seen light since before the Common Era, they reached it, a sealed stone threshold. Baruch's hands trembled as he and the team carefully removed the final blocking stones. Dust filled the air. Small fragments shifted and fell. Then silence. No one spoke. No one moved. The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone in that tunnel. The only sound was their breathing, quick and shallow in the stillness. Beyond the threshold lay a small chamber no more than 10 feet across. Its walls were cut directly into the bedrock, smooth, plain, undecorated. And in the center of the room sat something that stopped every single person in their tracks. A stone basin, round, shallow, half buried in ash. It was almost disorienting, like trying to process a scene that didn't quite feel real. "Where are we right now?" someone whispered. They were standing beneath the Western Wall Plaza in the middle of a massive project uncovering layers of ancient Jerusalem. Inside the chamber, the details slowly came into focus. Around the central stone basin were fragments of burned incense, small offerings, blackened clay oil lamps, carefully arranged, not scattered. Everything appeared intentional. Unlike other underground spaces that had collapsed naturally over centuries, this room had been deliberately preserved. It hadn't caved in. It hadn't been abandoned to time. It had been sealed on purpose. Whoever closed it had clearly intended for it to remain untouched. The team stood in complete silence. Later, Dr. Yuval Baruch described the moment as if time itself had paused, as though even the air in the chamber was holding its breath. One of the younger researchers, Dr. Sarah Mizrahi, had tears running down her face before anyone had spoken a word. No one needed to explain what they were feeling. They all sensed it. They just weren't ready to say it out loud. Under the bright beams of the archaeologists' lights, faint markings on the basin became visible. The script was Paleo-Hebrew. Though worn by thousands of years, the letters were still legible. Baruch leaned closer. When he finally read the inscription aloud, his voice trembled. "He who dwells here, his spirit never leaves." The words seemed to linger in the stale air. Someone gasped. Dr. Mizrahi covered her mouth with both hands. But here's what made the moment even more powerful. Those words weren't random. They weren't a generic blessing or poetic dedication. The phrasing closely aligned with ancient biblical descriptions of one specific place, the Holy of Holies. According to Scripture, this was the innermost chamber of the temple, the place where the Shekinah, the divine presence of God, was believed to dwell. It was considered so sacred that only the high priest could enter, and only once a year, on the Day of Atonement. Until now, no artifact directly linked to that space had ever been found. No physical evidence tied to its existence had surfaced. The team immediately moved to verify the dating. The oil lamps matched known examples from the 8th to 7th century BCE. The limestone composition of the basin was consistent with materials used during the era traditionally associated with King Solomon's reign. Piece by piece, the evidence aligned. And standing there beneath the stones of Jerusalem, the researchers understood that they might be looking at something no one had seen for nearly 3,000 years. That chamber, the one that caused such a stir, was actually the first section opened several years ago. For years before that, when guides would take visitors through the underground sewer channels near the western wall, they could hear workers above them. Everyone knew something significant was being uncovered. There was a quiet, shared anticipation. People kept asking the same question: when will it finally be opened? After nearly 10 years of careful work, that day finally came. When experts began studying the inscriptions inside, they noticed something remarkable. The phrasing and structure closely matched language found in First Temple-era religious texts. Some of those same expressions had previously been known only from manuscripts discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 20th century. For generations, archaeologists had dreamed of finding physical, datable evidence connected to the most sacred zone beneath the Temple Mount. Now, for the first time, there appeared to be material remains that aligned directly with long-standing biblical tradition. To many observers, it felt like a bridge between faith and physical evidence, something carved in stone thousands of years ago, as if to leave behind a testimony no empire, invasion, or passing century could erase. The reaction in academic circles has been significant, though measured. Official announcements have been cautious, sometimes vague. Details have been released slowly and carefully. Those responsible for overseeing the site understand the weight of the implications. The Temple Mount is sacred to Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. Any suggestion that one religious narrative has been definitively confirmed carries enormous political and spiritual consequences. Even well-supported findings can create tension in a place where history and belief are deeply intertwined. Some have described the discovery as powerful, even explosive, not because of what it proves scientifically, but because of what it means symbolically. Within parts of the Christian world, especially among evangelical communities, the find has been seen as a powerful affirmation of biblical history. Theologian Michael Brown called it one of the most significant archaeological confirmations of Scripture in modern times. At the same time, scholars emphasize the need for continued research, careful interpretation, and respectful dialogue. Because in Jerusalem, discoveries are never just academic. They are historical, they are spiritual, and sometimes they change the way the world sees the past. The discovery has also sparked theological debate. Some Christian leaders argue that it challenges what is known as dual covenant theology, the belief that the Jewish people remain in a separate covenant with God through the Torah and therefore do not need Jesus within a Christian framework. Critics of that view call it a serious theological error. At the same time, many scholars caution that complex religious questions cannot be settled by a single archaeological find. When comparisons were made to the significance of the Dead Sea Scrolls, several experts agreed the discovery could be historically important, but warned that its full implications may take decades to properly understand. Reactions within the Jewish world have also been careful and nuanced. David Lau, the former chief rabbi of Israel, reportedly expressed mixed emotions. On one hand, the findings seemed to affirm long-held traditions. On the other, he emphasized that disturbing an area associated with the Shekinah, the divine presence, without proper spiritual preparation could be seen as deeply problematic. For some religious leaders, this is not a moment of triumph. It is a moment that demands humility and caution. Islamic authorities have largely remained quiet publicly, though reports suggest there is concern about how such discoveries might influence political or territorial debates. The status quo governing the Temple Mount is delicate, and even carefully presented findings can have wide-reaching consequences. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, scientific discussions are intensifying. Researchers are advocating for the use of muon imaging technology, the same particle scanning method that revealed hidden voids inside the Great Pyramid of Giza in 2017. The hope is that this non-invasive technology could map additional underground chambers without disturbing the sensitive surface above. What has surprised many experts most, however, is not simply the age of the discovery. It is what the structure reveals about the people who built it. This was not crude or superstitious construction. It reflects sophisticated sacred engineering, precise hydraulic systems, deliberate preservation techniques, and a carefully designed relationship between physical space and spiritual meaning. Whoever designed these chambers understood how architecture could embody belief, encoding theology into stone meant to endure for millennia. And yet, much remains unknown. Radar scans have identified at least 3 additional underground voids that have never been entered. One lies directly beneath the dome of the rock, measuring roughly 40 feet across. If accurate, it could be the largest undiscovered chamber beneath the entire Temple Mount. What lies inside is anyone's guess. Political and religious realities may prevent direct investigation for the foreseeable future. But the conversation has changed. For nearly 3,000 years, this ground kept its silence. Now, for the first time, a sealed chamber has been opened, and what was found closely echoed ancient descriptions. The bigger question remains: if one hidden space contained such powerful evidence of the past, what else might still lie beneath the surface? Some argue that every chamber should be explored in the name of history and knowledge. Others believe certain places are sacred enough to remain undisturbed. Where do you stand? Should researchers seek to open the remaining sealed spaces, or are some mysteries meant to stay buried?